So welcome everyone to our third Africanus Teen Talk Show, and we'll get started now and over to Eben for the introduction.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the AfriKindness Teen Talk Series 3. I'm Eben Awolowi, one of your teen hosts, and I'm really excited to be with you all today for another powerful and uplifting session. Before we dive in, we'd love to know where you're joining us from. Please take a moment to drop your location in the chat. It's always amazing to see how global this community is and to connect with young minds like us from around the world. Please share with where you are joining us from with us in the chat. We've got some people from Leeds. We've got Ruby from Manchester. We've got more people from Leeds. Leeds again. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time joining us, the Teen Talk series is a space created by teens for teens where we come together, unmute ourselves, share our voices, and have real conversations that matter. Our theme today is all about law, and we'll be engaging a role model in that field. These sessions are made to empower, spark curiosity, and help people see what's possible in their future by listening to people who are overcoming obstacles and making differences in their field. So let's get ready to be truly motivated. It's time to introduce our guest speaker for today, Mrs. Tuiya Tembo. I'd like to make sure I'm pronouncing that right.
Yes, you got it spot on. Well done.
Okay. Ms. Tuiya Tembo is a solicitor and associate professor of law at the University of Bradford. She has a strong background in law, which she studied at the University of Leeds and worked in top law firms, helping people with real estate and property law. She's now moved on to teaching university students, sharing her knowledge with the next generation. Nonetheless, Ms. Tuiya's story goes far beyond her law skills. She loves bringing people together and has participated in many community projects. She's really passionate about helping young people believe in themselves and discover the power of their voice, no matter the circumstance. Let's give a warm virtual round of applause to welcome Ms. Tuiya Tembo.
Thank you.
Mrs. Tuiya, whilst doing my research, I've noticed that there are many titles that can be used to refer to a lawyer, such as a solicitor, attorney, a barrister, just to name a few of them. So my first question to you is, what is the difference between them all?
Thanks, Eban. That's a very good question. I'll first start by saying thank you for that very warm introduction, and I hope I'll live up to it in the course of this hour that we are spending time together. So the difference, I suppose, sometimes depends on the country or the jurisdiction where somebody would be working. So for instance, in Kenya, Nigeria, and a number of other countries, you would be largely referred to as an advocate, and it would mean that you're able to represent your clients both in court and also do the paperwork in the office. In America, your lawyers are generally referred to as attorneys. But in the UK, there's a clear distinction between the lawyer who is going to represent somebody in court, and that would be a barrister, or the lawyer who would be dealing with certain transactions outside of court, and that would be your solicitor. One other key difference to stress is that as a solicitor, and I'm a solicitor as opposed to a barrister, I don't have the right to represent a client in the higher courts. So I could represent them in some of the lower courts, but I don't have a right to be able to speak in front of a judge in the High Court, the Court of Appeal, or the Supreme Court. And that would be, I would have to hand over a matter to the barrister to then deal with that work. So your key difference is really a solicitor is more sometimes referred to as the backroom, but it is very exciting work and very rewarding. And your barrister would be the person who would be representing parties in court. And I'm keeping that simple, but just to take it one step further, you could cross-qualify. You could qualify as a solicitor and get higher rights, or then cross-qualify and become a barrister. So you don't really keep yourself closed if you went down one route and wanted to go down the other.
Thank you. I also wondered that lawyers tend to wear like a white curly wig and a gown, and was wondering, is that type of uniform, and have you ever had to wear it?
So the barristers do have to wear the wig, and it's that white wig. And somebody, if you've not visualized it, you can Google it. It does look a little bit odd in my opinion, but they have to wear that along with a black gown and a white collar when they are representing clients in court. So that's quite strict, and it dates back to the 17th century, and to date that's still maintained as what is required. And in addition to that, a lot of the courts are getting a bit more relaxed about this now. But traditionally, women also had to turn up in skirts and not trousers and wear black and white. But there's a bit of a relaxed nature around what you're wearing under the gown these days. But the gown and the wig and that white collar are a must if you're a barrister representing somebody in court.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tuiya, for that clarification. Our next theme's on identity and self-awareness. Here at Africanus, we've been learning that knowing who you are and understanding your feelings helps you make better choices, build real confidence, and stay true to yourself, no matter what the world throws at you. Over to Radiant.
What made you become a lawyer? Was it by choice or was it the only offer on the table for you?
And that's a good question. And sometimes I look back and ask myself, I could have been something else. Where would life have taken me if I chose a different path? But my dad was a lawyer. And growing up, I think I probably was about the age of 4 or 5, and we had some visitors who came. And it's always really awkward as a child, particularly in an African home or even any home really, when visitors come and they ask you those odd questions. How is school? How have you been? And they're just trying to engage with you. And so one of the visitors said to me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'd never really given that much thought. And to be fair, I was only 4 or 5. So because my dad was a lawyer, I said, I want to be a lawyer. That was kind of like the answer that just came to me. And then there was so much excitement in the room. Oh, she wants to become a lawyer. Oh, that's brilliant. Da, da, da. So that became my answer every time anyone asked me what I wanted to be. And then I just kind of found myself going down the route of becoming a lawyer. So it really was born, I suppose, out of my father being a lawyer, but more so because I just kept repeating it as the easy answer when visitors came to and asked what I wanted to do. And then I found myself going down the route of becoming a lawyer.
I've noticed a lot of who we are comes from where we come from, our family, our community, and people who influence us. Ms. Tuiya, how has your background shaped the kind of work you do today?
So my background, as I said before, my father was a lawyer, and that's perhaps what made me go down the route of becoming a lawyer myself. So that in itself assisted in shaping my initial career that I went into. But funnily enough, my mother is a lecturer, and so at some point I decided that I'll balance it out and also go into lecturing. But there were other reasons around why I went into lecturing. But part of the two career paths that I've taken have been largely based on the careers that my parents took. And I'm not encouraging any of you to simply go into a career because that's because of the career that your parents went into. It was also because I had watched what they were doing and I found a great interest in the work that they were doing. So my background helped shape the work that I do, largely because that was the work that my parents did and that's what I watched them do. But I expect that there would have been it's because they enjoyed the work and I had that firsthand exposure to the work that they did that made me decide to follow the two paths that I've followed.
Thank you for that. Over to Fumi.
Sometimes one experience can change everything, like joining a school club and discovering a hidden talent, or helping someone and realizing you love doing it. What's one personal experience that helped you discover your passion or talent?
Right. So I'm going to answer that as a twofold because I thought I had a very good singing voice, and I actually wanted to go off and try my hand in some form of performing art. And so I joined choir, and my siblings used to tease me that I don't have a good voice, and I just thought they were being jealous until the choir master asked me to sing. He was getting everyone to sing on their own, and he got me to sing, and then he was like, you need to sing from your stomach. I had no idea what that meant, and then he made me go to the corner of the field and try and project my voice from there, and I just couldn't sing. And so it was then that I realized that perhaps this dream of performing arts may not be for me, which I suppose was a good thing because it's a very hard area to go with, and so that kind of made my decision around that. So that was I want to say negative, but it was an eye opener. But a different experience. I worked as a solicitor for several years. And then one particular year, the law firm that I was working for, which is an international law firm, they tend to do work that supports other people in various ways. And I got picked or I went along with a number of my colleagues to do some teaching in Zambia. And we were teaching postgraduate students just soft skills, just to assist them. And it was that week that I spent, and it was an intense week, but it was that week that really awakened my desire to become a lecturer. And in fact, one of my colleagues started joking, calling me prof. And so that experience of just the 1 week of teaching made me decide that whilst I'm enjoying working within a law firm and dealing with transactions and clients, my passion and my excitement lay in being in a classroom and impacting knowledge on others. And so I started looking for a change of career from being a solicitor in relation to transactional work and going into lecturing, which is where I found myself at University of Bradford a few years later.
Thank you. Abdul Rahman, it's your question now.
A lot of teens are still figuring out who they are and what they're good at, and that's totally normal. If you could give teens one tip for understanding themselves better, what would it be?
I think the key thing is being honest with yourself and really just being able to realize what is it that I enjoy and what don't I enjoy. So I'll give you an example, and I know we are very tight on time, but I had halfway through my high school, I decided that actually forget this dream of becoming a lawyer. I want to become a psychiatrist. Now I did well in my O-level chemistry. I got an A, and in my biology I got a B. But those subjects were not subjects that came to me naturally. I had to work extremely hard to be able to pass those subjects compared to history, geography, etc., where I didn't necessarily have to put in, ridiculous hours to pass. So whilst I did well, I had to work really hard at it. But I had decided that I was going to become a doctor and then specialize in psychiatry. And so for my A-levels, I'd chosen biology, and chemistry so that I could go down that path. But a week before I started my A-levels, I panicked because I realized these are not subjects that I enjoy. And so it was going to be a really uphill struggle for me. So I woke up in a sweat and I said to my mom, I think I've changed my mind. I want to change my subjects. Because I think I definitely want to be a lawyer and not a doctor. And my mother, her reaction was, hallelujah, I've been praying for you because you're not a scientist. So my mom let me figure it out for myself. And the point that I'm making is, I think it's just really important to be honest with yourself and realize what it is that you enjoy, where your passion lies, and just be true to yourself, because this is a thing for you and not for anybody else. So for me, looking back, I'm glad that I sort of came to that realization that those were not subjects that were naturally my strengths. And I went down a route that I felt I was stronger in and more comfortable with.
Thank you. It's really important to be true to yourself and honest to yourself, especially as you're growing older. Next up, it's Precious.
Miss Tuiya, did you grow up in Africa at all? Sometimes people get judged or overlooked because of who they are, and for some, it might affect them in a negative way. When you came to the UK, did you receive any negative treatment because of your race? And if so, did it impact you positively or negatively?
So that's a very good question. And I think my experience will be different from, say, my children. So I grew up in Kenya and I came to the UK to study law at the University of Leeds. And that's the first time that I had, come to the UK. And so I grew up in a country and in an environment where pretty much everyone was more or less the same, and I knew nothing about discrimination. And so when I came to England, that's a mindset that I had, because I just thought I'm the same as everybody else. And I've been able to go through life in the entire time that I've been in the UK. I came in 1996, just deciding that I'm the same as everybody because I grew up in an environment where I was the same as everybody. And so for me personally, and perhaps it may be because of the fact that I came when I was in my late teens, and so I was already shaped, and maybe perhaps the background in terms of my mother and instilling that confidence in me, such that I went for opportunities without thinking I need to sell myself stronger. I'll just go for the opportunity in the same way. Whereas I think, and I say this because my children say to me that they feel I'm not black enough because I don't seem to realize that, the racism is real. And I think it is, and I believe that it's there. But I also try to encourage people not to always decide that I didn't get that role because of my color, and also just think what else could it have been, and ask for that feedback. So I've had a couple of times where I have been overlooked for certain elements, and I have probed and asked why is it that I did not get it, so that I can have a clear understanding of why it is. And if I once actually then was or put forward for an interview, and I probed to ask why was I not considered. So I think it's so I don't have a direct answer around a time when I've felt that my race or my background has been an issue in terms of opportunities, but I think it's because it is important to really just decide that I am just as good as anybody else. And so I'm going to go for that opportunity regardless. And if I don't get it, then I'm going to question why I didn't get it, so that I can have a better understanding as to what it is that I could have done differently to assist me. So I hope that assists in some way in terms of understanding or deciding what it is that we're going to fight for. And perhaps, but there will be challenges, and I'm not downplaying the fact that there are issues around that discrimination in relation to certain opportunities or doors as well.
Thank you for that. Racism is quite prevalent in this country. The best thing to do is to look for feedback to make sure you're sure that that's what's happening, and if not, just to move on from it. Next up is Pearl.
No, sometimes I feel like I have to act differently depending on who I'm around with. At school, I behave differently. At home, differently. It's confusing trying to figure out who's the real me. Have you ever struggled with finding out who you really are? What helped you feel confident in your true identity?
That's a really good question, particularly in the legal field, where you feel, and I say it's feel, and sometimes there is that expectation in terms of how you turn up in relation to your dressing. My particular struggle has always been with my hair, because like if I'm going for an interview, then I'll have it out, even if I had had the hair done the day before and I'd spent a whole host of money, because in my mind, I feel that if I turn up in this, then I look like a rebel. But the world is changing now, and I think there's that awareness around certain elements. But yes, so it's difficult, and I think that it's important to really do whatever makes you feel comfortable. So if I turned up when in my younger self with for an interview with my hair, I believe that because in my mind I would imagine or assume that people have already formed a negative opinion on me, then I wouldn't then be able to allow the real me to come through, the passion in terms of a role, etc. So there was that balance between I will take out my hair, but as I've grown older, I've become more confident, and I've decided, no, I've spent money on this hair, and so this is the hair that I'm turning up with. And if you like it, too bad. If you don't, then too bad. And also in terms of dressing, for example, I have a lot of African print clothes, and I save them, like the photo there is an African print, but I usually used to save them for church, and then they're eating up half my wardrobe and then my work clothes. But now I'm mixing and matching, and I think it's a really difficult one for us as Africans. Tell me, you've got your hair combed out, but you might, or even Abdurrahman, sorry, but you might decide I want to have cornrows, and then you're thinking, would that look right? And so there's a lot around that. What I would say is, this is who you are. What am I comfortable with? And just go with the person that you feel comfortable with. And in my younger day, the person I felt comfortable with was the person with the hair combed out. But now I feel very comfortable with this hair. But it's a difficult one. And what I will also say is that I think it's a journey. and my older me, looking back, should have had that confidence as a younger person. I've got my degree, I deserve a seat at the table, but I didn't have that confidence then. So just allow yourself, I think, to grow, but to understand that your hair, if you like it this way, your dressing, if you like it that way, your accent, if it's slightly different, you belong just as much as anybody else does. But the confidence grows as I believe you grow older. But don't allow anybody to ever put you down or tell you that this is how you should dress or not dress.
Thank you. It's very important to remember that you are your own person, so you shouldn't let anybody bring you down because of your actions and your appearance. Over to Nifemi.
How did your racial identity shape your experience becoming a lawyer?
So I think for me, coming from an African background where there's a lot of emphasis around, you must work hard, you must be the best you can be what you want to be. And I think those are some of the messages that in a lot of homes you get, and what I've seen is in particular is in the African home. And I think that's helped me in that regard. More as I've grown a bit older, the other element that has really made me really push to get to as far as I can is more that element around I would like for younger people to see that is somebody who looks exactly like me and they've gotten to where they've gotten to, so there's no reason at all why I shouldn't get there. So I think for a lot of Africans and my peers who are at the age that we are, so for instance, I've got a friend who's a judge, and it's quite refreshing to see that this is somebody who came from the same high school as me in Kenya and they're a judge in the UK. So that kind of element, the fact that you are African, I think you carry with it that responsibility to also assist or really do the best you can so that the younger people can also see that actually if they can do it, so can I, despite or because of the fact that I'm African. So the message for me growing up was always do your very best. If you're going to turn up and do it properly. And I think that's helped me to be able to shape or become the person that I try or thrive to be.
Thank you for that. Africa is a culturally rich place, and we shouldn't try to hide that. So it's great to be able to show others your racial identity. Next up is Radiant.
Um, what advice would you give to other young people who wants to be lawyers as well?
So becoming a lawyer, so one thing I will say is for any career, including law, you really have to work hard. So one, decide, is this where I want to be? And then secondly, I think you should do some research around, because as lawyers, and lawyer is a loose term because it encompasses a number of elements, including solicitor and barrister. So it's also understanding, what do I want to do? Am I better suited to represent clients in court, or would I prefer to work in the office environment, or do I want to do a bit of both? Because you could do a bit of both. The other thing about law is that it's become very specialist in the UK. So I specialized in property law and real estate, which, for instance, dealing with buildings where the acting on behalf of the landlord and they're renting out spaces to Topman or Zara, whichever, and just drawing up those agreements. So you find yourself almost pigeonholed into a certain area: family law, property law, corporate law, and so on. So again, as you're thinking about becoming a lawyer, you're also accepting the fact that you will at some point have to specialize in a certain area. So you start thinking around that. The other thing is that law is changing just as much as any other area where AI is starting to take over. So there's some jobs or roles that I did when I just graduated within a law firm, and now that's being done by AI, such as preparing reports, etc. So if you're somebody, and I think for everybody, all you young people on this call, you're probably quite techie and you're probably quite interested in tech. But someone like me, even turning on the TV, I'll be like, hey, come and turn on the TV, to my kids. So the other thing about becoming a lawyer is that hopefully you have some level of interest in tech, because there's a level of technology and AI that is now seeping into law that's going to run in tandem with law. But the key thing is work hard, and just really, attend talks such as this, try and speak to somebody around, what really it'll entail going forward. If you're able to get some level of work experience, which is competitive, but is still achievable, then do try and do that just to get a little bit exposure into areas of law. But my one message is just hard work, and hard work definitely does pay.
It definitely does. And as well as that, speaking to any lawyers that you know would also be a good way to gain knowledge and insight. Our next theme is temperament and values. In our Teens Academy, we've been learning about temperaments and personality, and knowing your temperament and values really helps you understand why you act the way you do. It's a big part of figuring out who you are and what matters to you most. Over now to you, Precious.
Miss Tuiya, what's your temperament?
I'd say that I'm generally quite calm, except if my children do something that I'm not happy with, and then they will see my wrath, but just purely by shouting in case there are any social workers on the call. But I'm generally calm. And I think even under pressure, I'm able to just stay calm, assess what it is that I need to do, and then press on with that. So I think that sort of calm nature that I seem to have has assisted me in a lot of ways. So, for example, in the field of law, and this is regardless of what area of law you go into, there will be times where there's a lot of pressure. I had periods where a client would give us instructions at something like 4 o'clock, and they need the deal to be concluded by midnight that same day. And so, there were times where there's that pressure, and if you were unable to stay calm, then you probably lose about an hour fretting and really feeling the pressure before you then actually get started with the work. So I am just, and I don't think, I think it's just something that is naturally in me. So I'm happy that I have that calm nature. There are also times where, there'll be certain elements around working with students, and you've given some instructions, you're expecting that they're going to be followed in a certain manner, and either they didn't understand them or they just simply didn't follow them. And it's that ability to just simply remain calm and reprimand or make clear what the issue is and what should be done. So I'd say in terms of temperament, if I was to just give a one word, is that it is just a calm temperament. So I know I did a course where there were different, there were like 3 different temperaments, and yeah, and I've totally missed them because I've totally forgotten them. I did a test as well. I just didn't make a mental note of what that was.
I've heard people say things like I'm naturally calm or I get excited easily. That's part of our temperament, the way we naturally act to things. Would you say your temperament has helped you in your work? And if so, how? How can teens learn to embrace their unique temperament instead of trying to change it?
So yes, I think my temperament has helped me in a number of ways, and I will give one example in terms of just being able to work with people. And this is probably so I already gave the example of the pressure around working under pressure, but just being able to stay calm because there will be periods where there's pressure. But there's also times where I have worked with people who I haven't really agreed with the way that they're doing things. And when I've tried to and I've seen them have bust ups with other people because other people don't agree with them, and then they end up having a big argument. And that doesn't necessarily resolve. In fact, that doesn't resolve anything because then you alienate each other and people tend to do what they're doing. But that element of just staying calm and picking my moment when I'll be able to have that discussion with the party, whoever the party is. It could be a lawyer on the other side of a transaction. It could be my boss, which has happened on a number of occasions where it's a case of fine, they've come, they've said this, but they haven't considered something else. And so I'll stay calm. And when the time is right, then I will, say, you haven't considered X, Y, and Z, and this is what we need to, this has already been done. This is how we should do this transaction to be able to achieve X, Y, and Z. Yes, so I think it really is important. Now, as a teenager, or indeed any person, even me as a full-grown, I won't say full-grown human, we're all full-grown humans on this call, but I think it's also understanding your temperament And if you realize that your temperament is a barrier to getting to where you need to get to, and as I've given the example of where if you're two people trying to achieve the same goal in a transaction, but you're both getting irate, you're not going to get anywhere. It's a case of understanding or stepping back and thinking, this temperament of mine, is it the right temperament, or what should I do? And I'm not saying don't be yourself, but what I'm saying is work on certain elements that you think are the things that are holding you back. So it might be that in class, you're a more reserved person than, say, a friend of yours, and the teacher asks, has everybody understood? And everyone says yes, but you haven't understood, because your temperament is that of being reserved, and you're just calm, and you won't, get excited and shout where no, can you go back? But it's a case of thinking, right, I definitely need to come away having understood what has been covered, and therefore I'm going to find a way in which I can approach the teacher and explain to or ask them what is the issue. Or explain to me how I go about solving that problem, because you covered it in class and everybody else seems to have understood, and I didn't want to hold the class back, but I genuinely did not follow. And I'll give a real life example where my son, in the high school that he was in, they would get graded. So you'd be graded attitude to learning 1 to 4, 1 being very good, 4 being the lowest. And his geography teacher gave him a 3. Now, some people blew up in class when the teacher was handing out the reports. How could you give me this, da da da? And he just stayed calm. But then he cornered the teacher after class and said, why did you give me a 3? I've scored really highly in all my tests. And then the teacher explained that it was simply because, yes, he's doing well in the tests, but he's not in class. He doesn't seem to be concentrating, and he's being distractive. But it was that thing that then helped him understand, okay, I'm not going to shout like everybody else, because what I want is the answer. So understand your temperament, but also don't allow that to hold you back or hinder you from the goals that you need to achieve, and find workarounds around that to get to what you need to get to, or the conclusion, or the goal you need to achieve, really. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Tuiya. It's very important. I think being calm is a good quality to have, especially in a courtroom. And also the fact that your temperament is yours. No one should let you change it, but also it's also good to work on your weaknesses and to make yourself a better person as a whole. Next question is for me.
Miss Tuya, we all have certain values, things we believe are really important, like honesty, kindness, or hard work. At school, they teach us British values to make us be better people. As a professor, what top values have you leaned that helped you get to where you are today?
Well, you mentioned one of them, and I think for me, that's my key or my core value, and it's honesty. So anytime I've gone to any job, I have been open and honest about my weaknesses. And you have to do it carefully and cleverly, in terms of, I don't know anything, you may not get the role. But it's also equally important not to oversell yourself, and then you get a role and you find that actually I can't do it. So as I already explained, in my early time of my career, so I've always specialized in property law, and in my early time of changing roles from one law firm to another, I was open and honest about, these are the strengths and these are the things that I can do, and these are the type of transactions that I've done. However, I have not been exposed into to dealing with X, Y, and Z type of transactions, but I quickly add with, I'm a quick learner. And so that helped me, that level of honesty and openness helped me to then be able to gain, I get a role, but then they don't throw me in the deep end and tell me, get on with it, because they know that I haven't done certain transactions. So I would say the really key thing is honesty. And so it's the same with the students, where if a student asks me a question, if I don't know the answer, I will simply say, I don't know the answer. And as a lecturer, you're expected to know everything. And you should really, to some extent, know at least more than your students. But nobody knows everything. And I'm never afraid to admit that, actually, I don't know that. I will go back, I will find out, and I will come back and tell you. That way, I'm not misleading my students and I'm not giving them the wrong information. So honesty has been something that has assisted me throughout, and it's something that was drilled in me by my mother. And so it's really the one key. If I had to pick one value that I believe has helped me throughout, it's just that level of honesty.
Thank you, Miss Sia. Honesty is very important. It makes people trust you more, and you gain more opportunities and friends from being honest. Our next question is from Radiant.
There's a general question that values aren't always truthful. How have you been able to uphold your values in terms of honesty?
So that's a good question, because yes, there's a thing that I think people say, lawyers, liars. So for instance, in court, you've got to defend your client regardless of what it is, but you are also under a duty not to mislead the court. So your client may have told you that they actually murdered somebody. You cannot tell the court they did not murder when you know full well that they did. But what you can do is try and get your client off on some level of technicality. So, but you can't outright lie to the court. So there's that question around lawyers lying, and lawyers cannot. I'll take us a couple of steps back. If you're a solicitor or a barrister, you're governed by a professional body. And one of the things that the professional body requires of you is honesty and integrity. And if you do anything that's found to be dishonest or lacking integrity, then you could be struck off. You completely lose your practice certificate. So honesty is something that's expected. Now, what does happen in practice, as I've mentioned, is you have to defend your client at all costs, unless your client is making you lie to the court directly, in which case you'd simply just withdraw from acting on their behalf and they'll have to instruct somebody else. So you could get your client off a plea, being found guilty, not because you've lied to the court that they did not do it, but because perhaps the police did not follow the correct procedure in terms of how they obtained the confession from your client. So there will be ways around it. So I'm not encouraging what now, as I say, it sounds like a white lie, because that would be wrong. But that's just to kind of explain the way in which lawyers get around having to defend your client, but at the same time, you're not lying to the court. So that honesty and integrity is key. Otherwise, you lose your practice certificate. And there are a lot of stories around people who've been dishonest, things like you've changed a date on a document because you are late filing it in court and they've lost their practice certificate. So one of the things I try and instill in my students who are aspiring to be lawyers is honesty, honesty, honesty. Even if it ends up costing you, say, I don't know, a zero in your assignment, but honesty is really key. And it starts kind of now, so that you're training yourself for the time that you become a lawyer, so you don't work so hard and then lose your practice certificate for something that is a lie. And on that note, what I want to say, in case I don't get a chance to say it later, is we're all going to make mistakes. I make mistakes even today, despite having been in this career for so many years. So we're all going to make mistakes. The key thing is put your hand up as soon as you realize you've made a mistake and say, oops, I made a mistake. And there will always be a workaround to fix that mistake. So your honesty is going to be key even when it comes to mistakes, because we all make mistakes. Why? Because there's always a way of fixing it. But you try to cover it up, it could cost you a lot more than it would have done if had you just been honest.
Thank you, Ms. Tuiya. As a lawyer, being truthful is very important, as to keep the integrity of yourself and your client, to make sure no one gets charged more than they deserve. Our next theme is leadership. Every team here is a leader in the making, and learning leadership skills now helps us to build confidence and make good decisions, as well as positively influence the world around us. Over to you, Evan.
Some people think being a leader means having a big title, but I've realized leadership is really about influencing and inspiring others. Mrs. Tuya, how did you first discover you had leadership qualities?
I want to say when I was quite young, because I'm a firstborn daughter and I've got two younger siblings. And so, because they were much younger than me, I realized that they needed my support in relation to certain things where, you know, they were a lot younger and they needed that learning. And at the time, my mother had traveled to Leeds and left us in Kenya. She'd come to do her PhD. And so that meant that somebody needed to step in. And I had aunties and my dad was there, but I also felt that I needed to help and support my younger siblings. So I would say that the birthing of realizing that there was an element of leadership perhaps came from quite an early age because of the fact that I was a firstborn daughter.
Thank you for that. Our next question is from Pearl.
Who was your role model that inspired, shaped, and impacted your life? And what qualities do you admire in the role model?
So I would say my mother is my role model. So my mother is extremely hardworking, and anything she sets her mind to, then she really goes for it full force, regardless of what happens. But in doing so, she doesn't lose herself or the other things that are important to her. So her career was important, but so was her raising a family. And she, as I said, she came and studied for 3 years and left us at home, which I think would have been a very difficult decision, had left certain structures in place at home such that we wouldn't feel the impact. So I'd say just the ability for my mother to really just work hard, but also my mom has always been the person who has just been herself. So, for instance, for my mother's wedding, and in her time, everybody was wearing sort of the white clothes. She had African attire, and instead of a cake, they had goat meat. But she was just making a statement: I'm African, and this is how I want to get married. In my time, when I was younger, most of my friends, if not all my friends, had biblical names, which are also sometimes referred to as English names. But I just had African names. And again, my mother felt that we're African, so despite the fact that we are Christian, it doesn't make us any less Christian by her giving her children purely African names. She also always dressed in African outfits. I initially found it a bit interesting, but now I'm finding myself becoming my mother. So just that ability to watch her be who she was from an early age, but that determination and that hard work and that, you know, core values, I think so that's been, you know, she's been my role model.
Thank you, Miss Tuiya. There's many role models in this world that you can follow. People who are doing exceptional things in the world. So just follow them and learn from them because there are some life lessons that they give out every day. Next question is from Abdul Rahman.
What does real leadership look like today, and how can teens start practicing it today?
I think real leadership and how teens can practice it is more about teamwork than trying to be the dictator or I'm the one, I'm the leader and you're following. It's about working together. And I think a good team leader is able to realize what their strengths are, but also realize the strengths of their team members or their friends in the case of teenagers, and understanding that that's a strength that that person has and this is a strength that I have, and we can work together to then be stronger as a team together. So a good example is how you've all worked really well with this collaborative nature with the questions, and nobody has fought for I'm going to take the lead. So it's worked really well. But equally, like in things like studying, I might be really good in maths and somebody else really good in literature, and then we're working together. So to me, a good team, a good leader is somebody who recognizes their own strengths and how they can assist other people in relation to that strength, but by the same token, realizing their own weaknesses and seeing how they can work with other people who will be able to support them in that level of weakness. So I think it's just that collaborative nature, that teamwork and that team spirit, I think that makes a good leader.
Thank you, Miss Tuiya. The ability to uplift your peers is really important and can help your team be more efficient and you to become a better leader. Our next theme is on emotional intelligence, resilience, and growth. In our Teens Academy, we've been learning about emotional intelligence, resilience, and a growth mindset, and how they help us face challenges, bounce back from setbacks, and keep us growing into the best versions of ourselves. My colleagues will ask you a few questions from this. Over to you, Precious.
I heard that being smart with your feelings, like knowing when to speak up, when to listen, and how to stay calm, can make a huge difference in life. Miss Tuyo, how was emotional intelligence helping your careers and relationship?
So that's quite a good question. And I think I would answer it by starting with, I think it's important to pick your battles, because you kind of need to know what is it that I want to get out, overall, and then picking the right battles. I'll give a key example in terms of one of the law firms I was working at. We were quite a small team. And in fact, the team was only just starting. They were a large firm, but there was a new team that had been created, and there was just myself and my team leader. So the team was only consisting of 2 people. And the work was quite a lot. So I started going in on a weekend just to catch up and to get the work done. But I wasn't being paid overtime. But it started to irritate me that I was putting in all these hours and not really getting paid for them. And so I spoke to not my team leader, but I spoke to one of my friends who was a director within that organization. And I just said to her, what do you think I should do? Should I pipe up and say I'm, putting in all these hours? Or what should I do? Because she understood the structure of the organization better than I did. And so her suggestion was, because the pay rises or pay reviews were coming up, I would be better off waiting till the pay review and then arguing my case at that point. So it's really about at what point do I raise something. And I wouldn't suggest that you simply carry on without, if you have an issue around something, without raising it. I think it's important that you do, but it's about at what point do I raise it, and also how do I raise it, and then also having a plan. So in my case, I raised it at the time of the pay review, and I didn't feel that the amount of hours that I was putting in was rightly rewarded or compensated. And so I ended up leaving. But that helped me because I left on good terms. They gave me a good reference, and I ended up getting into another job that actually I really enjoyed a lot more, and I felt a lot more appreciated and recognized in terms of the hours that I was putting in. So I think, I hope I've answered your question, but it's that element around speak up, but understand how am I speaking up, and at what point am I speaking up, and how do I really convey the message that I want in a way that I will achieve what I want to achieve. So it might be that somebody insults you, and at that point it's not the right time to say anything, not because you're a coward or not because you accept what they've said to you, but because they're already irate, and therefore I will come back to them the following day and really tell them that's not how you should have addressed me. I don't think that was right, and etc. And then you have a constructive discussion around it. So don't allow anything to happen to you or to be done to you or to be said to you that you're not happy with, but do deal with it in the right way at the right time. So that level of, I think, emotional intelligence around how I respond to people and how I work with them, which has been a learning process, has been helpful. And I just gave that one example of many around that.
Thank you, Ms. Tuiya. Being able to understand your own emotions and the emotions and characteristics of other people can save you a lot of trouble. Our next question is from Nifemi.
We're all learning and changing as we go through life. What's one personal habit or mindset that has helped you keep growing and improving over the years?
Thank you. Good question. So I have a growth mindset. And as I say, it stems from my mother because she never was static. She always thought, right, I need to move. I need to push myself. I need to get better. So what I tend to do, and I started doing this from quite a young age, is I do a 2, 5, and 10. So I have my 2-year plan, my 5-year plan, and my 10-year plan. But I also have a plan A, plan B, and plan C, because I know that I could plan things, but they will not necessarily, they're dependent on a number of factors. So if my plan A doesn't work out, what's my plan B and what's my plan C, so that I can have certain things to fall back on, and then I don't feel I put everything in this, it hasn't happened, oh dear, what do I do? But at this juncture, I will also say that I'm a born again Christian, and the one thing that I really believe in is Christ. And so I do my plan, all my plans, but I put them in God's hands, and I say, you know what, let thy will be done. And I just have that confidence that my 2, 5, and 10 and my plan A, B, or C, whichever of the three, and it might be that a random plan D just suddenly turns up, which wasn't in my plan A, B, or C, happens. So I think it's really important to have that growth mindset, and to assist you in growing is understanding, where do I want to be in 2 years' time? I want to get 3 A's in my A levels, and therefore, what do I need to do to get those 3 A's? And then plan it that way. And then you're thinking, I want to become a doctor. But what if I don't get the 3 A's? What would my plan B look like? Would I go back and resit my A levels? Would I change my career and become a nurse? It's that sort of element so that you're aware and you've got a plan. So planning, I think, is really key.
Thank you. Planning is really important for knowing where you want to be in the future and giving your life some more structure. Naturally, people don't like to fail, and when it happens, they might want to give up, especially when it's a difficult task. Has failing to defend a client ever motivated you? And if so, in what aspect did it motivate you?
So I had a particular, so because I don't deal with court work, I deal with matters outside of court, and I deal with property work. And, a client will have wanted a transaction to go through at a particular time in a particular manner. And for some reason, it hasn't actually happened that way. So where I've had transactions that haven't concluded at the time that the client wanted them to conclude, then that has assisted me in thinking about what could I have done differently. And I think it's all quite important to reflect and think what went wrong, what could have gotten better, what could have been done better, and did I really do my best? So things around, I'll create time to focus on this because I realize it's urgent, and therefore prioritize. So over the years, I've learned elements around prioritizing, around flexibility as well, because you'll start off your day with this, but something new comes in. But that flexibility and that has also assisted me in making sure that I achieve the goals that my clients have within a timely manner. Particularly in my field, it's always really the timing at the cheapest cost to the client.
Thank you so much, Miss Tuiya, for sharing your journey with us. Before we wrap up, just a final question from us. In 1 minute, if you could go back in time and tell your teenage self one thing, what would it be?
That's a really difficult one. So what I would tell myself, because I think it's about having the right balance in terms of making sure that you enjoy your teens, but enjoy them in a safe manner, because those years are going to come and go. So if there's, I don't know, a football match and you need to revise, balance your time, but definitely go play that football match with your friends, obviously subject to having permission from your parents, and then at the same time do the works, because you will not have time to go back in time to do some of those elements. So when I was at university, one of my friends wanted us to go traveling during the summer holidays, and I was like, oh no, I'll do it later. And looking back now, I wish I had done that traveling. I have been able to travel, but it's a different kind of travel because I'm traveling with my children. Whereas at that time, I would have had a different experience with my friends. So the key message, I think, is have your goal and stay focused on your goal, but also don't forget your teenagers. Enjoy your life as teenagers. Enjoy time with your friends, make friends, keep the friends that are right for you, and really just indulge in some of the elements around life skills. So I didn't learn how to cook, for example, until I came to university, which wasn't good. So learn how to cook, so get some of the life skills is what I'd say. So my message in the 1 minute is work hard, stay true to yourself, but really also make sure that you enjoy your time as a teenager, because you are going to have time where you've got no time to play around, as it were, and have to focus because you'll have bills to pay.
Thank you, Ms. Tia, for your time. Now for Precious to wrap it up.
That's all for today. Thank you very much to Miss Tuiya for your time. Thank you for joining us. To everything listening, you can become anyone you want to. I hope you feel more confident and empowered after our session. Remember, the journey to success is a marathon, not a sprint. Take what you've learned today and start applying it in your life today, one step at a time. The next Teens Talk series is on the 23rd of August with a medical doctor, Dr. Chisholm Maxwell. Please scan the QR code and register for the next session. We would love for you to join us for another inspirational Teens Talk series, which will be our last Teens Talk. Thank you to our team facilitators for leading a wonderful webinar. Thank you to every parent who joined today. Supporting us means a lot as we grow and develop into bright adults. And finally, thanks to every young person that's joined, interacted, and learned from the Teens Talk. Until next time, it's a goodbye from us.